And still an avocado. Great. Thanks for playing along. I'm learning some new fruits now. I'm very curious. Well, again, thank you so much. This is going to be a very fun and engaging workshop, we hope. So we want you guys to feel free to be very expressive of what you really feel and think, and be open to other people's ideas, and just roll up our sleeves and have a good time today. To review our objectives, Andrew, can you pull that slide up? There's a couple of things we're trying to achieve today with your help. The first thing is to learn from you, your experiences and your preferences, to inform the design of a toolkit that works for you. So we know there's lots of tools out there, and there's lots of different options, and we really want to learn from you what's working and what you prefer. And we also want to allow you to share your use cases on how a toolkit could help you implement the science-based targets process. And then finally, we want to begin to co-create with you the design for a nature science-based targets toolkit. So those are the objectives, and we plan on achieving them today. So please do stay engaged throughout the entire session. And I think we're ready to begin. So I'll just hand it over to Katie.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Jess, and welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us today. So as Jess said, this is the objective for the workshop today. And I think what I want to do to start with is just set the context for this workshop. So we are developing this toolkit, designing this toolkit in partnership between the Science-Based Targets Network technical team and you as members of the corporate engagement program. We really welcome all of your ideas today. We really want you to include surprises. We know that there might be some, and we want them at this stage, so they're anticipated and welcome. But we do have a number of overarching design parameters and givens that we'd like you to bear in mind as we start the discussions later on. So to start with, I'm just going to run through these. So the toolkit must be aimed at companies. It must enable companies to operationalize all 5 steps of the science-based targets process that are laid out in the initial guidance for business. So many of you have already been in various webinars around science-based targets, and you'll know what the definition is at this stage, so I don't need to reiterate it, but we wanted to just say here that, yes, the parameters here is that it must be aimed at companies, so thinking about what companies need and operationalizing all 5 steps of the guidance. And I don't think I also need to go into details here about the process of target setting, but this is the 5 steps that are laid out in the initial guidance for business. And we'll be talking about these a lot today, referring back to them, thinking about tools for different aspects of these and how do we actually operationalize these 5 steps. So just putting this here for reference, but in case you're not aware, so step 1 is about assessing, really trying to understand what is material to your business, what is your value chain, and then going on to prioritizing different places and identifying the spheres of influence that you want to focus on. Going through to step 3 around measuring, setting your targets and disclosing baselines on those targets. Step 4 around taking action according to those 5 steps. And then the final step around tracking progress towards those targets. So that's the 5-step process that we'll refer back to. And then one of the things that we often get asked is, what do you mean by a tool? How do we define a tool or a toolkit for this purpose? So we are using a very, very broad definition of a tool. We want to capture anything that facilitates setting of targets by corporates. It could include interfaces for analysis, different data platforms, modeling software, different metrics, approaches, frameworks, decision trees, so that all manner of different items could be a tool that could help with target setting. And what is a useful tool might also differ for the different steps of the science-based targets process. So just worth bearing in mind as we go through the workshop today. So we want all users to be able to access this toolkit. So we think that it should be suitable for companies of all different sizes, all different stages of maturity. So that could be anything from really experienced in collecting data to just starting out on this process. We want it to cover a range of different business activities, operating locations, and different positions in the value chain. So we want anybody to be able to come to this toolkit and find their way. We feel that data should not be a barrier to entry. So some companies will have a really large amount of high quality data, and other companies will have much more limited data. And we don't want that to be a barrier to anybody using this toolkit or being able to set the science-based targets for nature. So something to bear in mind. We also want the toolkit to be modular. So there might be different elements of it that might be of use for different companies, or within your company, different users might use different elements. So it doesn't just have to be this one block that everyone uses, it can have all different elements to it. We really want the toolkit to enable companies to engage in collective action as well around different places or scapes surrounding direct operations, upstream and downstream activities. So in the guidance, we refer to spheres of control and spheres of influence. And we want this toolkit to be able to help with all of those different aspects. We also want the toolkit to enable companies to address impacts and dependencies, and we want it to enable them to look across all target categories and realms. And I won't go into detail on these here, but the guidance talks about both impacts on nature and dependencies on nature, and talks about these different elements of the different target categories that we might look to. So across the 3 realms and looking at both pressures and the state of nature. And wherever possible, we feel that it's really important that this toolkit seeks to build on and complement rather than replace or duplicate existing tools and approaches that companies are already using. So in the initial guidance there's a table that sets out a number of tools that could be used by realm and for different pieces of analysis. And we want to build on this as much as possible. There's a huge range of tools already out there. We don't want to be creating anything new, but we want to build on and complement that, specifically looking at science-based target setting. And so considering these points, we wanted to just set out how these results are going to be used. And we are really open to any and all of your input today. So please be as open and honest as you can. This is just the first step in this process of understanding what user needs there are around the toolkit. And all of your feedback today is going to inform the toolkit development as we continue over the coming months. We're not guaranteeing that we're going to be able to take on board every single piece of feedback and have very specific outcomes, but we really want to take on board your feedback and use it to inform the development. So the timeline at the bottom sets out what we're doing here. So alongside the user needs assessment that this workshop today is starting, there'll be a load of tool scoping, so looking at what tools are already available. We'll then be drafting a design specification for the toolkit, and then moving into this phase of toolkit development into late 2021 or early 2022. But this does, to an extent, depend on the different development strategies of existing tools that we might want to build on or complement, but also is dependent on funding. So I think that was everything that I wanted to cover in my introduction, and I think I'll hand over to Andor now to introduce the assignment.
Thank you so much, Katie. The logistics for the exercise they will do here is part of the way we dance together. We will have 3 rounds. The first round of working together in small groups will be about a dream scenario, a success in 2022. The next one will be about the options that we see now might happen and that you will examine, pros and cons. And the last exercise, also in groups, will basically take in the first two, the insight from the first two rounds into a draft design of yours. And we're starting in small, 2 to 3 initially, and then 3 to 4 and 4 to 5 in the last one. So we are slowly getting you into the mode of working together in these small groups. When we are inviting you to the breakout rooms, you will see the top left image popping up on your Zoom screen. And most of you have seen this before. In this case, breakout room 1, that's what the group you're invited to. Take a look at the number, and at the same time, we will paste a link in the chat box, a link that will bring you to this list, in this case of 30 teams. And you can now, as you know that you're in room number 1, you will end up there. You click on team 1 on the screen that you get up when you follow the link in the chat box, and you will get transferred to your template. So all into breakout room 1 belonging to team 1 will have the same template on their screens. And then you are starting working according to the assignment they will publish in that template. There, for most people, well, 35 to 40% at least, they work better when they see images. I said, let's put a sketch here. We will put it this way. If you're comfortable doing print screens, you can actually do a sketch. You can show the sketch to the others, and the others take a print screen and paste it into that template that you were directed to. You could even, as these are PowerPoints in Google, you can start drawing boxes, circles, add some notes in there, because that will help others to understand how you're thinking and what the essence of it is. And you can even do annotation like a whiteboard in Zoom. If you're not familiar with any of these 3 options, don't go there. It might become too messy, unless you like messy. Then you go there anyway, without losing too much time on solving the assignment. And this brings us over to the first assignment, unless any of you have any questions. Good. We will do what psychologists call backcasting. We'll put you in a state of success, October 22, 17th to be more specific, Monday even. The toolkit for companies has been delivered months ahead of the initial plan, much faster than we thought. The feedback is overwhelming, and value chains are engaging in the work in addition. Just because of that, unheard of basically, you have been, your little group of 2 to 3 have been invited to GreenBiz and a fireside chat together with Paul Polman, where you will share the journey and the success of it and how you got there really. And that's a backcasting piece of it. You are, we want you to be in that success, look back to what you did to get there. And there's a set of questions as well that you will respond to and discuss in your small groups. And you just have 20 minutes. And the reason for that is that we just want to open up your minds initially now. You don't have to even answer all the questions. You take the ones that you prefer to start with and deal with them in your group using the templates that you will get links to. And that's it for the first exercise. Try as much as possible to be in that success, almost feel like what it is like to be there, and then respond to the questions. Let's see now, I'm checking. I'm trying to check in the chats as well. Okay. A box. Is something still in front of this, Chris?
Well, you're not sharing your screen anymore, so no.
Okay, let's see. What I sent to you now is the screen or the presentation with the team link. So as I mentioned before, you register what breakout group you will be invited to, and then you click the link in the document that you will get to if you follow the link. And I'm trying the link just to make sure that we end up at the same space. So there we are. So if you then get back to the Zoom call, because you probably got that's up on your screen now in the browser, you will see when Peter is sending out the breakouts, which breakout room you got into. Are we good to go, Peter? Cool. Let's go. Johan, it seems as if you're looking for the breakouts. Are you?
And I'm looking for Johan in the list. Can't find him.
Oh, that's odd.
I've experienced this before, and those moments you have to kind of log out and then log in. Otherwise, I can't find Johan anywhere.
Yes, Johan, we're trying to find you in the list of participants before we can send you to that space. Let's see.
Andrew, I will just join room 20. They have a question, okay?
Cool, that's fine. Johan, unfortunately, I will have to ask you to leave the Zoom call and then get back.
Let's see.
I do think that no one of the participants even had an option to be staying behind. So we're all here now.
Yeah, we should be.
Okay, everyone's here, brilliant. So thank you very much all for your thoughts during that session. I jumped into a few groups, as some of you will have seen, and heard some really interesting discussions in a couple of groups I dropped in on. And I'm sure there's lots of great points and thoughts in the other groups too. So the thing that we need to do now is come together and share some of those thoughts. So what I'm hoping to do here is run through each of the questions we had in turn and get a volunteer for maybe one group or two groups per question, just to quickly share some of the thoughts and points you've got written down in the template, or maybe some other thoughts you had and didn't manage to write down under each of those questions. So we've got about 10-15 minutes scheduled from this, so we should have time to hear from lots of different groups on at least one of the questions. And the first overall question we had about the end users. So which end users did you have in mind when you designed the toolkit? And would anyone like to jump in as our first speaker and volunteer to run through some thoughts that they had written down under that question? Don't be shy. Someone must have. Well, I've seen there's lots written down in the template, so someone go for it and we can just play it by ear.
I can go.
Thanks.
Hi, everyone. My name is Carly. I am one of those people who gets very uncomfortable with the teacher peer pressure of like, anyone. But anyways, so I was in a group with David and Juliet, David from PepsiCo and Juliet from WWF France. When we were thinking of end users, we felt that the toolkit should be broad enough to incorporate or to encompass the needs of the broadest end user group as possible, recognizing from the example of the Science-Based Targets Initiative that there probably will be some industries that will need bespoke approaches to be able to set a science-based target based on their relationship with nature. And also recognizing that those industries are likely to change based on the nature system that you're looking at. So the companies that need bespoke solutions for freshwater may not be the same companies that need bespoke solutions for oceans or biodiversity. So trying to incorporate the largest group as possible. And then with that too, in theory, you would want that tool to be able to be used by anyone. So recognizing that a lot of companies do hire consultants for this work, wanting to make sure that it's not just that you need the specialized knowledge of a consultant to be able to use this tool. Juliet and David, sorry that I kind of volunteered us, but if there was anything else you wanted to add, please do.
You did a splendid job.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Very
Carl.
good.
That was a really great summary from me as well. So on to our next question then, I guess. I'm going to ask for another volunteer and hope someone else is going to jump in like Carly did, which was great. So our next question is, what was the overall ambition for what you designed? And I'm going to leave it open for a second to see if anyone would like to volunteer. Or if not, I'm going to pick a group.
I think I can go.
Brilliant.
Bauke here from Corbion. I was in a group with Clementine. It was the two of us, and I think our main two takeaways and overall ambition were that we'd like it to have ease of use. So I think it goes with the idea that everyone should be able to use it, but also clarity on targets. So for the CO2 science-based targets, there's some clarity, and you want to reduce a certain thing. And then this is the science-based targets for nature is much more comprehensive, but it would be very nice to have a specific target to work towards, or at least in some way have a step on the horizon, so to say.
Thank you very much. That was a really great summary. And I'm looking at the time actually, so I'm wondering if we'd like to have another volunteer to talk about that question of the overall ambition as well, just to see if you're thinking similar things to Bauke and his group there, or whether we've got quite different thoughts from within the group.
I think maybe I can complete.
Yep, go for it.
Thank you. I was with Ulrike and Joanna in the group, and if I may add to what has just been said, I would say that one of the ambition is also that the indicators is to be recognized globally, to be used, and all the science based, all the guidelines are based on science, and it is necessary that the future indicators in the toolkit are recognized globally by as many people as possible to work and to embrace all private companies and organizations to use the science-based target for nature guidelines.
That's great. Thank you very much. And thank you very much to both of you for those summaries. So on to question 3. So question 3 was, what considerations were made when you decided on the key features, and how did you prioritize? Would anyone like to volunteer to share some thoughts on that bullet point? Anyone at all? Getting starved out by the silence.
I can go. I was in a group with Nico. And what came out as an important consideration for us was flexibility of the tool to be able to fit within the operating structure and the various business models that different companies use, and the different levels of complexity that each company has on their own. That came out as quite key, both in the materiality assessment, but also in the realms and the impact categories.
Thank you very much, Diane. That was great. Would anyone else like to share anything under the third question about the key considerations and features?
Hi, Joe from GSK here. Under the considerations and key features, I think I was with, I forget who I was with, but Chris Webber was leading our group, so I'll start there. But yeah, under considerations and key features, we thought that the toolkit needs to provide, principles and guidance on targets. It needs to allow people to be able to measure their footprint. it needs to be able to be used at multiple levels of the organizations, from practitioners up to sort of senior VPs, that sort of thing. And it should also work across, obviously, all stages of the science-based targets.
That's great. Thank you very much, Joe. Lots of people volunteering now, which is great to see too, that everyone's sharing their thoughts. So I'm sure that by the time we get to the end of this call, most people on the line will have spoken up. So if you want to get it out of the way early, we've got 2 more bullet points to go under this. So many of the companies describe it as an ideal tool using experience. What features do they appreciate the most and why? So does anyone get this far and would like to speak to what they were talking about under this point? Okay, that's silence. I might be really mean here then and pick on someone that I know. I heard having a great discussion about this, and it was the most recent group I'm in, which Christian and Charlotte were chatting about, with just this 4th question before I left. So I don't know if, Christian, you would be comfortable to share some of the thoughts you were having with the group under this point. Okay. Or maybe Charlotte, if you're on the line still, I can't see your picture, but I'm sure you are. If you could maybe share some of the things you were chatting about.
Sorry, Alex, which question was this again?
So this was the 4th point about the ideal tool using experience and which features it had, which you were chatting about in your group, just as I jumped in at the end.
Okay, so I think what we kind of discussed was being able to see the progress, and then from the progress, being able to get recommendations from that section.
And I should jump in there as well as where I was in the group with Charlotte. One thought we had also is that to make this web-based should be one solution, and have it, or cloud-based, so that would enable help in working like cross organizations. For example, you can add a consultant, and it becomes like more agile in that way, and it would also enable, instead of having to send around spreadsheets and so forth, you would be able to use a login and use it as a online toolkit. So that was some of the things we talked about, but also I pointed towards a tool used for climate disclosure, the Panorama by Climate View, to be able to see like the breakdown of your company's emissions, or in this case, your company's impact on nature, and maybe then as split out by different sectors and different tiers in your organization, and with suggested action plans. And maybe this would be all be interactive. So, I mean, I'm looking forward to this tool, so please provide it.
That's really great to hear, and thanks both for sharing that feedback with the group. I've also got a comment from Sam in the chat that Group 1 had a really good conversation about this, but I'm a bit conscious about time, and I'm looking at the templates, and I see that Group 1 have also got lots written down under point 5. So I wonder if anyone from Group 1 would like to volunteer to share anything either related to the bullet point we're just talking about the features that make it an ideal tool using experience, or what made the toolkit such a key part of company sustainability practices. Anyone from Group 1 wants to chat about that?
So yeah, maybe I can on the 4th question. So what we thought was that it will be easy for suppliers to add their own data, because the supplier data might be key, or all part of the supply chain, also the downstream part. And another bullet point I would say would be that the tool might be interactive, so that everyone can put data in the tool. It might be within the company, but also outside of the company, so maybe to create some kind of interactive way of working with the suppliers, with the states or everyone, so that we will get the best data available as possible, because the data quality is key.
That's great, thank you very much. And finally, I think we have time for one more person. Would anyone like to share anything related to the last point from one of the other groups? or not as it may be. Okay, that's fine. In that case, thank you very much all for your feedback that you shared to the group here. Really interesting points coming out there. And of course, we've got it all written down in the templates too. So everything you've written down there will be looked at by the technical team and considered together. So it's really great to see just how much input we've managed to compile from all of you during that. And we have 2 more assignments to go, which are slightly different. So now I think I'm going to hand back to Andor to introduce the next one.
Yes, and I think we'll, Katie, you have the intro for us here. We have 4 options as we see them now. There might be more depending on what happens here. So please share those with us.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks, everyone. So just as an introduction to assignment 2, hopefully my slides are showing now with you. So in this section of the workshop, we wanted to get some thoughts from you on different options, different scenarios for what the toolkit could look like. So as an introduction to those, we have this current model. So in the initial guidance at the moment, there is a series of tools split some of them by realms, so some for land, some for water, some for oceans, and then also split by issue specific tools, so those that look at climate change, biodiversity, and then those that are more cross-cutting, so maybe some that look at supply chain modeling, materiality assessment. And so we have this group of tools split by issues. And this is the current model, and SBTN directs companies to these tools developed by different organizations and then provides guidance on the suitability of those for specific issue areas. And I should also note that these are tools that could be used primarily in step 1 of the initial guidance. So that's the kind of what we're starting from, the current model. And as part of the options, we could continue to develop that. That could be one option. But there's also a number of other options that we want you to explore, and maybe even more that you're already starting to think about. And in this next session, we'd like to talk about those in a bit more detail. So option 2 could be a cross-issue master tool, so a single integrated tool for steps 1 to 5 that maybe it draws from other tools, but this central interface for everyone to access. So it could be a front end, so an interface that's on the SBTN website that draws from other tools. So that's another option. A third option could be that SBTN publishes criteria that then third-party tool providers use to ensure that their tools are suitable for setting science-based targets. So SBTN could accredit these tools to ensure that they're of the required standard or have a number of characteristics. They could then raise awareness about these tools with companies and provide guidance on their use, but wouldn't necessarily be having this master tool. And then the fourth option is maybe a hybrid. So maybe there's something that combines option 1 and 2, or option 2 and 3, or option 1 and 3. Could be any of these different examples, but there's a way in which this toolkit could operate that you think would be best. So these are the options we're thinking about so far, but I'm sure that you also have other options that we could explore here. So I think, Andor, you'll talk through how we're going to split up into teams again and work on this, but these are the 4 options we're going to be talking through. Thank you, Katie. Yes, we have divided you into new breakout now, random again. And as we did in the first round, I'm sending you the link in the chat box to the team's assignments. So once we invite you to join a breakout, you just check the number on the breakout invitation and you click on the same number in that list of groups or teams. You will get one of these 4 options in each group, and we don't know exactly which one. Well, of course, we know that the first group will get the first one and the fourth group will get the fourth, and the rest is math basically, but you will get a random one anyway. And that's it.
Andor.
Yes.
Could I just offer one additional point? Just a quick reminder back to our opening presentation on our design parameters. It may be just helpful to remind everybody, a tool is anything that facilitates corporate target setting. It can include analysis interfaces, databases and platforms, modeling software, metrics, approaches, frameworks, decision trees. So just in terms of how we're thinking about this and what we're including, that's what we've set as our scope. So just wanted to give that reminder boost.
Thank you for that, Mike. Peter, are we good to go with the breakouts? So unless you've clicked the link in the chat box, please do so now and look out for the number of your breakout. Here we go.
Just for information, people are leaving the meeting without telling me or you. So I have been sitting here dividing the groups.
Of course, yeah, thank you for that. So let's see now, Jenna, you.
Andor, you put all the SBTN people together again.
Oh yeah, yes, I did. I put it in
No, it's okay.
The messenger group.
Yes.
I wanted some response on that, but I can put you out there in the smaller groups.
Send us into the world.
Or if you can choose on your own.
Okay.
Yeah. So we'll just check if you're a co-host. I think you should be, and then you can join.
Now you are. Now you are.
Cool.
Co-host.
We missed you. And now we have a full Samantha as a co-host.
Sweet.
Quite good because you can see who's in the room before you go into it. It's quite interesting.
Just to tell you guys, people have left the meeting, so all of a sudden the 4 number groups that turn into 3 number groups.
That's perfect, right? That's no problem at all. Let's see now. Jenna Trolio, are you with us?
Jenna? No, I don't think so. She's not in the thumbnail bar either.
No, she was in one of the breakouts, but she didn't respond. She had to sign on again.
So are we all waiting to be assigned again, or because I still don't have the option to choose a breakout room?
Oh, let's see, Chris.
I'll put you into room number 3. Okay.
Sounds fine to me.
And Peter, you can, when Chris gets back, you can just assign him as a co-host, and then he can choose himself.
Oh, I wasn't aware of if he was on the team because he didn't put 00 before his name.
I see. No, but he's James Bond anyway.
Oh, great.
Alex, are you there?
Alex is in room 15 maybe, or
okay,
is she?
Okay. Alex, I just want to say that I think this went very smooth.
The last exercise.
Yes.
Sorry, I just went for a quick loo break, so that's why I turned my camera off and disappeared.
Yeah, of course. No. I just want to tell you.
That's a very good reason, Alex.
Yeah.
It was so smooth, and we're ahead of schedule again. And when you look at people on screen here, you can see if they are sitting there, they want to sit, or if they don't, they just want to be part of it. So I think we're in a good spot right now.
Yeah.
Can I ask you guys, would there be participants who joined this workshop without?
Great. Do we have everyone back here again, Andrew and Peter?
We're good. We're good, Alex.
Fantastic. Great. Thanks very much all for your work during that too. I saw that it was working very well for options 1, 2, and 3. And then we had some slightly different discussions with the hybrid option about exactly what that looks like. So that would be interesting to capture as well in our feedback session, which we have right now. So again, time to share some thinking with the wider group. And the way I'd like to do it this time is just run through each of the options in turn. And let's just focus on the pros and cons column, or we'll be here all day. So just the first question that we're trying to answer. So I'm going to ask for volunteers again. So could I have a volunteer from any group that was looking at option 1, which is the issue specific toolbox, to share some of their thinking on the pros and cons with me?
I can start with option 1.
Great, thanks, Jess.
Sure. So the pro is that it'd be relatively easy to do. I mean, it's almost what we're doing now with the decision tree in the guidance. But the cons are several. One is that there's not sector specific, in our mind, sector specific enough information to make an evaluation. So you can get part of the way down the line, but you're like 40% not there unless you have sector specific information. And then there's also this silo issue. So it doesn't fix the problem of all these different issues like freshwater and biodiversity and land stuff impacts being separate issues. So you can't see a comprehensive trade-off of doing X versus Y.
That's a great summary. Thanks, Jess. I know we had a few groups looking at each option. So would any other group that was looking at option 1 like to very quickly share what they've got in the pros and cons column?
Yep, this is Cheryl. I can talk about the group with Fanny and Adeline. For the pros, yeah, we agreed with what Jess said. And also there's flexibility to choose different options. In the cons, it's sometimes hard to know which tool to use and how to use the tools. And if you're already using a tool, it may need kind of new data entry to utilize the different options.
Thanks, Cheryl, and thanks both of you for those great summaries. Let's move swiftly on to option 2, the cross-issue master tool. So would anyone from a group looking into option 2 like to share some feedback on the pros and cons?
Yeah, I can try to do, Alex. It's Keivan from Nutrienco. So one of the pros is that, of course, it's a single system. So we think that it's going to be easier for the user to manage and analyze the information. Of course, can try to give us a clear standard and definitions because we are not going to suffer to have different tools. And of course, to provide some aggregate data. But in the other hands, one of the cons is that how this tool will be able to cover different topics from different sectors in just a single tools. And of course, to avoid being too generic approach, and of course give accuracy by the data, and that's it.
That's a great summary. Thank you very much. And we probably had at least one more group looking at option 2 as well. So would anyone from another group looking at option 2 like to share some thoughts?
Yeah, I can share something if that's okay.
Great.
I'm
Yeah,
Grit from Arcadis. I was in a group with Sarah, Joanna, and Quentin. And to build on the pros and cons that Keivan said, the ones we mentioned also in our brainstorm, is that con may also be that companies that are already using existing tools might lose their input or have to start over again, which will not be very appealing. And a very big pro is, of course, that you can compare and that you finally have alignment between the methodologies and how to apply, that we will be able to better standardize the process.
That's great. Thank you very much to both of you. And I think we only have time for one group on option 3, just looking at my clock. But would anyone who is in a group focusing on option 3 like to share some pros and cons? Option 3 is criteria for tools and accreditation process.
Jump in real quickly unless someone was about to go off mute. We thought, so on the pro side, we felt that having this accreditation process could help speed up innovation and help get tools available to corporates who are seeking to set an SBTN sooner. Noting that if Science Based Targets Network itself was going to create this tool, they would have to do fundraising, which would probably slow down the process and make it a little bit longer until tools are available. On the con side, and we spent a lot of time working within the operationalizing in relation to this con, but we were wondering if this could potentially increase the cost of setting this science-based target, which for some companies could be a barrier to them taking action. So if the accredited tools are not available open source, how would that kind of have ripple effects on the amount of companies taking action? Similarly, SBTN, this was another con we had, SBTN wants open access tools. And so would it be possible for such tools to be made available for free? And then what would be the economic arrangement between the tool creators in order to incentivize that?
Brilliant, thank you very much. And on to option 4. So I think this one was a bit trickier because the hybrid option itself wasn't completely defined before we went into it. So rather than focusing on the pros and cons, I'm going to ask a slightly different question here. So did anyone in option 4, what did your hybrid look like? Did it take different elements from option 1 and 2, or was it 2 and 3, or did it cover all 3 of those options? I just wonder how far people in the option 4 got with that, and if anyone would like to share what their option 4 looked like.
I can start us off. So I was in a group with Eleni and Edgar, and our option was between 2 and 3. So there was SBTN would have a platform that would connect a lot of third-party certified tools under one roof, but the underlying data would be purely from those those third-party providers.
That's great. Thank you very much. And thanks very much again to all of your feedback. Look forward to going through all the templates and seeing what we've got under all those different options. But now I think it's time to hand back to Mike for our 3rd and final assignment.
Okay, thanks so much, Alex. And I'm a bit in process, but I'm first going to share my screen so you can see why I've been heads down, hopefully, for much of the work so far and been mostly quiet. Can you all see this? Yes, great. So this is we call graphic facilitation. I'm trying to capture and model much of what we've been discussing, trying to synthesize the salient points and pulling together really what we want to carry on in a visual. We do this for a lot of reasons. It helps us really try to show relationships between things. You might have heard the expression, a math equation about how many words a picture is worth. And so we use this as a form of capture and synthesis and really a communication piece, both during conversations as well as after. So you'll see over here to the left, it's really our high level. What we're trying to do here is operationalize science-based targets for companies. Today is about learning, sharing, and designing. I won't go through all this, but you see our summary of what we're going for. You see a high level reminder about who our user is and who we're designing for, what our ambition is, and some of those key features that we've identified. Still filling this in, but you can imagine a matrix that we might use as some sort of our own tool to start to weigh these options against each other. So this will continue to be in development, but the reason that I'm showing it now is that we're inviting you to do some of this yourselves in the next round. So our next assignment, which you'll be going into shortly, really gives you a chance to try and step back and answer the whole. And so looking at all the work we've done so far, you're going to be in a slightly larger group now, and really we're asking you to complete a first draft what you think the answer is. That can take many different forms. You'll see in the assignment that there's prompting questions. We're keeping the same pattern. But one thing that we would really invite and encourage for you to do is to try drawing a picture. As I said, it's an incredibly valuable process piece that we lean on pretty heavily for a reason. And so you'll see right at the beginning of this assignment, we're inviting everyone to take a few minutes to just step back, collect your thoughts, and try and think, all right, what's the answer? What's the big picture here? And how might I represent that in a picture? And so whether you'd like to draw that on the piece of paper that you have handy, or you'd like to utilize the tool in Zoom and actually draw on the screen to communicate with your team, or even if you just want to model right in the PowerPoint deck, any of those are all really valuable. And so we're going to invite you to that. Andor and Peter, are we ready to go into that, and anything else that you'd like to add?
Yes, we are. I was almost waiting for people to say, where's the list? Where's the list? And the list is coming in the chat box now. And as you're used to now, see which breakout group you're invited to and click the same number in the list that you just followed. So here we go. See you on the other side.
Smooth.
Great. I have a couple of slides for this next bit, so I should get them up. Can you see that okay?
We can.
Brilliant.
Now everyone is back.
Okay, perfect. So thank you to everyone once again for your inputs during that exercise. And I think over the past 2 hours or so across the 3 exercises, we've had a huge amount of information collected. So that's really great. I'm looking forward to going through it all. Quite daunted by the task of going through all the different templates, but looking forward to see all the inputs we've collected. So thank you so much for all your work on that. And just to finish in our last 10 minutes, I'm going to provide a quick summary of the process that we've been through today. So by working through this series of 3 assignments, we've gone from first looking at the initial toolkit design and doing some thinking about some of the components that can make up the toolkit, then on to looking at different scenarios and thinking in detail about the pros, cons, and practical implications of going down different routes. And now through this last exercise, we've reached a point where we're getting towards the solution for what the successful toolkit will look like. So really excited to see some of your drawings of that solution and some of the notes you've made in that context. I think if it's not there already, it might be going in soon. Andor's going to be posting a question in the chat about your key takeaways and opinions changed from this. So we'd really like to get your input on this final question. So as I'm speaking through the summary and next steps now, it would be great if you could type your answers to that question in the chat, and then we'll have 1 minute after I've finished speaking just to open up to see if anyone wants to share any of those insights. But in terms of what's come out of this for me, a couple of particular salient points that I've seen. So the first thing that I've been really excited to see from this process and through all the discussions is the broad coverage of the entire science-based targets process. So thinking back right to the beginning, Katie shared a diagram, which many of you will be familiar with, which is the 5 steps from the initial guidance for business, which outline the science-based targets process. And in the different groups I've been dropping in and out of, I've heard discussions about tool features that help people get through the early steps by dealing with issues such as how to identify which issue areas should a company be setting targets on, and where in the value chain the largest impacts are occurring that are of most pressing priority to address and include in the science-based targets. And of course, companies that are getting started with step 1 now, these are questions at the early stages of the guidance, the kind of thing that you're grappling with and trying to address. But it's fantastic to also see through this toolkit process and through the design that we've gone through that people are thinking about progressing to the latter stages, because it's only progressing to these late stages that we as a society are going to start to see the benefits, or perhaps rather the costs, when companies align or don't align their actions with science-based targets for nature. So we've been thinking through a toolkit that provides implementable outputs from the outset of these discussions, which is really promising for me to see. We've also had lots of mentions of existing tools that companies are already using, things like the Greenhouse Gas Protocol for climate. and discussing about how we can build on these so they're better and easier to understand, quicker and simpler to obtain relevant information from. And this kind of feedback's things that we're really keen to continue exploring to you through the next sessions. There's all sorts of detail we can dig into there, exactly how we need to change these different, how we need to make it better, how we need to make it simpler for companies. So much to do there and so much to explore further with you so we can make a toolkit that's easy for companies to use for nature. And finally, it's been really interesting to see the differences between different organizations, particularly in terms of data availability. So some companies are working with loads of really detailed location data, and others are just getting started with the process and don't have so much. And we need to have a toolkit specification that works for all these groups and design a toolkit that works for everybody and helps different companies in different places move along this process so we can all work together, which is what science-based targets are about, to work together with different actors in a landscape to achieve the change we need to as a society. So where do we go from here? Well, as Katie mentioned at the beginning, we're currently in a research phase with this work, and we have 2 work streams in this research. We have the user needs research, which is what we've started today, and we have the tool scoping research, which is a really detailed review of all the different tools that are out there, how suitable they are, or how ready and effectively they could be adapted for the science-based targets process. So there's 2 streams of research that will be running in parallel, with lots of feedback back and forth between the 2 running into May. And then we'll be looking to bring it all together into a toolkit specification by June. And there will be loads of opportunities for the corporate engagement program to continue to be involved with this research. So after we've collated and compiled all the inputs from today and reviewed these with the wider technical team, what I'm envisaging is that there'll be several areas that we want to explore further and some specific technical challenges and questions that need to be answered and addressed. And a proportion of these questions will be able to be addressed by desk-based research and looking at the tools already out there, which is the information that we'll pass on to the tool scoping team. And others we won't be able to answer without further discussions and co-creation with companies. So that's where we'll come back to this group in the small group sessions. The exact format that they'll take will depend on what the issues are once we've analysed all this information, but it will likely be the one-to-one interviews or focus group sessions. So I hope many of you will want to continue to be involved with that, and we can all come back together and continue to have these discussions. So by June, we can have a really great specification that works for users. And finally, in the longer term, once we have the specification, that's of course only the first step. So once we have this, we're going to be going into the tool development phase to actually produce what we've been designing here. There's going to be a process of fundraising for this, as is outlined previously, and then there's development, which will likely take place over several months. But our target, as you all know, is to have a toolkit ready to launch by the end of 2022. So at this point, companies will have all the resources that they need for the science-based target setting process to be fully operational. And a very final note, I guess, that after 2022, of course, our work doesn't stop there in a way on this toolkit. As companies are using the toolkit, I'm sure there'll be further feedback revealed, and the scientific understanding of Earth systems and our impacts and dependencies upon them is a really fast-moving field that's progressing all the time. So in this context, the tools will be monitored and maintained and kept up to date with additional features and further iterations likely. But what we hopefully will have by 2022, and we started co-designing today, is a fundamentally effective framework that further sustainable tool development can occur around. And therefore, as all these latest and greatest features come in, it will be easy for companies to pick them up and incorporate them within their target setting processes. So I think that's it for my summary. Thank you all once again. And now I'm going to hand back over to Jess for some final closing comments before we finish. And I'll stop sharing my screen.
Alex, a very quick one. There's a question in the chat. Updated version of the decision tree.
Sorry, Andor. Yes, there is a question in the chat, which I mentioned at the start, but forgot to pick up. So I can see Andor's put his question in, and some people started answering.
I actually meant the question from Fanny there.
Sorry, I'm just scrolling through the chat, Andor. Could you read it out to me? Because I can.
Well, an updated version of the decision tree will soon be provided. An update planned with a matrix with impacts of each sectors.
I think rather than me answering that question, it's probably best to hand to Sam and Katie to, if that's okay, on the decision tree and Encore respectively.
Yeah, sure. So I know Jess and I have been working on getting an updated version of that decision tree, and it should be ready for circulation, I believe, this week. In terms of an update plan of the matrix with the impacts for each sectors from Encore, we do have an extended version of the matrix that was provided in the guidance available in the technical annexes, but we do not currently have an immediate plan to update that further. If that is still not sufficient for initial screening purposes, we're happy to take that feedback and see what more we can do. But yeah, right now we don't have any further updates planned for that.
Jess.
Yeah, folks are leaving, so I just wanted to make some quick announcements, but also thank everyone for participating. I thought this was a really useful session. Appreciate all your energy. A couple of announcements. The Water Hub is going to enable folks, companies who want to do self-guided water pilots to do that, and also to have monthly office hours. So if you want to be part of that, send me an email. We are going to have office hours ourselves, the corporate engagement program, Sam and I, on March 11th. So if you want to be part of that and you have questions that you want us to answer, send them in advance. And then we're going to get this survey out that Sam mentioned on step 1. And we'd love to have feedback by June 30th if possible, but you have a full year. We said you have a year, so that's fine if you can't get it by June 30th. And then we're also going to do a workshop to get feedback on step 1 and 2 at the end of March. And we'll be sending details out on that shortly. But give yourself all a pat on the back. I thought this was an amazing session. And thanks to everyone who participated. And we'll see you at the next session.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
So are we gonna get these slides that you guys presented today, or is those not gonna be available to the group? Will we get any of the information that you guys presented today or the outcomes?
We need to talk about that.
Okay. Okay.
We'll look back to you on that.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. Really great though.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks.
Just,
Bye.
Just to be sure, the chat window will be saved.
Yes.
Great.
Still see a few folks. Oh, Baka, we're done.
I think he was just leaving that final comment, but that was helpful.
Oh, good. And Natalia?
Right, now it's just SBTN.
Double zeros.
Oof. I mean, so at least somebody said it was well run, so that that's good. I definitely felt it was a bit hectic at times.
Sam, you're always so positive after one of these things.
I don't know. if
Someone
that's
said it
sarcasm
was
or
well
not.
run.
I mean, I found it a bit hectic. The groups that I was going into were a bit confused, but it was a lot of sort of abstract and complex thinking. So I mean, the place that the final group I was in landed at was really good. So it took a lot of